Ever wonder what's really going on under the surface? Well, today we're doing a deep dive into your very own, at this, circulatory system.
That's right, your own personal highway system.
We're talking heart, arteries, veins, the whole kit and caboodle.
And you know what's fascinating?
What's that?
We received this medical school lecture all about cardiovascular disorders.
Oh, yeah, that one. Super interesting stuff. And you know me, I love a good breakdown. So what do you say we unpack it a bit, make it, listener-friendly?
Absolutely. Understanding the system is like getting handed the blueprints to your own health, right?
Exactly. Knowledge is power, or at least that's what they say, right?
It's true in this case, that's for sure.
So first things first, listeners. Picture this. Your heart. This incredible muscle, roughly the size of your fist, just hanging out right in the center of your chest. Wild, right?
Well, not exactly hanging out. It's got its own little protective bubble wrap called the pericardium.
Ah, so like a high-security, carrying case for this vital organ. Got to keep it safe.
Exactly. And inside that case, layers of powerful cardiac muscle.
Always working, right?
Yeah.
Constantly contracting, relaxing, pumping that blood throughout your body. Speaking of pumping, I was really interested in that section about the heart's electrical system. Sounds kind of complex for something that we think of as like on or off.
It's way more sophisticated than just a simple on-off switch. Your heart actually creates its own electrical impulses.
Whoa, really?
It all starts with what's called the SA node,
Okay.
often called the heart's natural pacemaker.
So that's what keeps everything beating in rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
So the SA node sends out the signal, and then what? Does it like zap the whole heart all at once?
Not quite. Think of it like a relay race.
Okay.
The signal from the SA node, it's like the starting pistol. It tells the atria, those upper chambers of the heart, to contract.
So they get the blood flowing first.
Exactly. And that contraction, it's like passing the baton to the AV node, our next runner.
The AV node keeps things moving along, like a middleman, making sure the signal gets where it needs to go.
Exactly. The AV node holds on to the signal just for a moment, giving the ventricles, the heart's lower chambers, time to fill up with blood.
Okay.
Then boom, the signal reaches those ventricles, they contract, and blood gets pushed out to the body.
And that precisely timed relay race, that's what we hear is that lub-dub through the stethoscope.
You got it. It's a beautifully orchestrated symphony going on in there.
Happening all day, every day, and we don't even have to think about it. It's incredible.
That's the beauty of it. But what's truly fascinating is what happens after the heart pumps. That's where the highway system of your circulatory system comes in.
All right, map it out for us. We've got arteries carrying blood away from the heart, veins bringing it back. But what makes them like highways?
It's all about design and pressure. Arteries, now those are like your expressways built for speed, high pressure. They've got thick, muscular walls.
Makes sense. Got to handle that surge of blood as it's pumped out of the heart.
Right. And that surge, that's our blood pressure. We always hear those two numbers.
Oh, yeah, but what do they actually mean?
Those numbers tell us just how hard your heart's working to move blood through your body. That top number, the systolic pressure, that's the force when your heart contracts. Peak pressure.
A maximum effort.
Exactly. And the bottom number, diastolic. That's the pressure when your heart relaxes between beats.
So it's like measuring the extremes.
In a way, yeah. It's about how strong the pump is, but also about how well the pipes can handle the flow.
Which makes you think, what happens when those pipes or arteries start to get, clogged up?
Now that's where we start seeing problems like atherosclerosis, often called hardening of the arteries.
And it's a pretty common problem.
Incredibly common, and it's all about what's flowing through those arteries.
Right. It's like, instead of those nice, smooth pipes, imagine them slowly building up with, gunk over time. That's kind of what happens with atherosclerosis, right?
That's a perfect analogy, and that gunk is plaque. A mix of cholesterol, fats, calcium, all sorts of stuff. And as it builds up, it narrows those arteries, restricts blood flow.
And that can't be good, right?
Not at all. It makes your heart work harder and harder.
So is that where what they call bad cholesterol comes in? The LDL?
You got it. Think of LDL cholesterol like tiny little delivery trucks carrying cholesterol to your cells.
Okay.
Now, we need some cholesterol. It's important. But too much LDL is like a traffic jam of delivery trucks just dumping their cargo where it doesn't belong.
And clogging up those arteries, we're trying to keep clear. So how do we clear up that traffic jam?
That's where the good cholesterol comes in. HDL. Think of HDL as the cleanup crew.
I like it.
Scooping up that excess cholesterol and taking it back to the liver to be disposed of. The more HDL, the better that cleanup crew works.
So it's all about maintaining that balance.
That's the name of the game. But let me ask you, What happens when that plaque buildup gets so bad that it completely blocks blood flow?
Oh, that doesn't sound good. We talking like heart attack territory.
We're talking about potentially life-threatening situations for
Yeah.
sure.
So let's talk about what happens during a heart attack, or, using the medical term from your lecture notes, a myocardial infarction.
Right. Well, in the simplest terms, a heart attack happens when blood flow to part of the heart muscle itself gets totally cut off. And it's usually because of a blood clot forming in an artery that's already narrowed by plaque.
So you've got this blockage, and then on top of that, a clot. That's scary.
It can be very serious. It's like a city suddenly having a blackout because the main power line's been cut.
And just like that, no more power.
And without that oxygen-rich blood, the heart muscle can't do its job, and it starts to die.
Which is why it's so important to recognize those warning signs early on.
Absolutely, and to get medical attention immediately.
Speaking of warning signs, what are those warning signs? What should people be looking out for?
Well, the lecture lists several. There's chest pain, feels like, pressure, squeezing, fullness, sometimes even pain that goes up to your arm or jaw.
Yikes. Okay, so like not subtle then.
Not always, no. You can also have shortness of breath, sweating, maybe some nausea, vomiting, lightheadedness.
Those are some pretty intense symptoms.
They can be, yeah.
Now, I've heard that heart attacks can show up differently in men and women. Is that true?
It can, and it's really important to remember that, men often get that classic crushing chest pain.
Right, the movie Heart Attack.
Exactly. But for women, the symptoms might be more subtle. They might have back pain, nausea, extreme fatigue.
So it's easy to brush those off.
Exactly. So it's always better to be safe than sorry,
Yeah.
Get it checked out if you're experiencing any of these, even if you're not totally sure it's a heart attack.
Better safe than sorry. Absolutely. Now, your lecture notes also mentioned something called congestive heart failure. And honestly, that sounds kind of terrifying. Is that like the heart just gives up?
Well, it is a serious condition, but it doesn't mean the heart stops entirely. What happens is the heart muscle gets weaker and it can't pump blood as effectively as it should.
So it's like an engine that's, I don't know, sputtering. It's still running, that can't quite keep up.
That's a great way to put it. And this inefficiency, it leads to fatigue, shortness of breath, sometimes fluid buildup because your heart can't keep up with the demand.
So less of a sudden stop, more of a, gradual decline over time.
In many cases, yes. And that's why it's so important to manage things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol. They take their toll on your heart over time.
It's like anything else, right? You don't do the maintenance, eventually it catches up with you.
Exactly. And speaking of maintenance, this lecture also talks about aortic aneurysms. Now, that's a whole other type of threat to your cardiovascular system.
Yeah, I remember you comparing them to ticking time bombs earlier. Definitely caught my attention.
Well, they're serious for a reason. An aneurysm is basically a weak spot in the wall of an artery. In this case, the aorta, which is the biggest, most important artery you've got, carries all that oxygen-rich blood from the heart out to the body.
Essential plumbing.
Right. And this weak spot, it can bulge out like a balloon, and if it bursts, that's when you get life-threatening internal bleeding.
So not just about keeping the pipes clean, but the pipes themselves have to be strong too.
Exactly. And the tricky thing is, aortic aneurysms, they don't usually have symptoms until they rupture.
Oh, so no warning. That's even scarier.
It can be, yeah. Which is why it's good to talk to your doctor, see if you have any risk factors, if any additional screenings might be a good idea.
Definitely food for thought. So we've talked about what can go wrong, but what about the good news? What can we do to, keep our hearts happy and healthy?
Well, the lecture stresses how important those lifestyle changes are. And thankfully, a lot of them are within our control, right? Maintaining a healthy weight, eating right, moving your body, quitting smoking, managing stress.
I mean, we've all heard this before, but sometimes you just need that reminder,
Absolutely. And it's amazing how big of a difference those small changes can make. Did you know that just going for a brisk walk most days can seriously boost your HDL levels?
That's the good cholesterol, right? Our cleanup crew.
Exactly. Every walk, you're sending out the cleanup crew. And quitting smoking. That's like hitting the reset button for your whole cardiovascular system.
Oh, wow, I bet. How so?
Well, think about it. Smoking damages those blood vessels, raises your blood pressure, lowers the oxygen in your blood.
All bad news for your ticker.
Exactly. So quitting, it's one of the single best things you can do for your heart.
I can practically hear our listeners breathing a collective sigh of relief right now.
I hope so. It's not about making these crazy, impossible changes. It's about those small, consistent choices that add up.
Right, so choosing the salad over the fries, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, small changes, big impact.
Exactly. It's about creating a lifestyle that supports your heart, one choice at a time.
Like investing in a high-quality car, right?
Yeah.
You got to take care of it if you want it to run smoothly for years.
Exactly. And this lecture also gets into some of the amazing medical treatments we have now for managing these
Oh,
conditions.
yeah, like what?
We're talking medications that can actually lower cholesterol levels, procedures that can open up blocked arteries, even heart transplants.
It's incredible how far we've come, isn't it?
It really is. And the field's always evolving, new research, new technologies.
Which is exciting, but also, I don't know, kind of a lot to keep up with.
I hear you. But no matter what, one thing stays the same. Prevention is key.
Couldn't agree more. Taking care of our hearts now is the best thing we can do for ourselves down the line.
Exactly. And it's never too late to start. Even if you haven't always made the healthiest choices, your body is incredibly resilient. You start making positive changes today, you're giving your heart a fighting chance.
I love that. And that actually reminds me of something you mentioned earlier about the human body's capacity for renewal.
Ah, yes. That never ceases to amaze me. Our cells are constantly dividing and replacing themselves. We're literally in a state of constant renewal.
So we're always a work in progress.
Always. So I'm curious, if our bodies are basically rebuilding themselves over time, what does that mean for the choices we make today, especially in terms of our heart health?
That's a great question.
Right. If we start adopting those healthier habits now, even if we've had, shall we say, a colorful past, are we giving our hearts a fresh start with those new cells?
It really makes you think about the long game, you know.
Mhm.
It's not just about tacking on years to our lives, but about like actually adding life to those years, right?
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And speaking of adding life, what are your thoughts on all those, futuristic treatments we keep hearing about? Stem cell therapy, gene editing. Could those be game changers for heart health?
Now, those are some exciting possibilities. I was reading about scientists using stem cells to, get this, actually regrow damaged heart tissue.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's like science fiction come to life.
It really is. And it's still early days, of course, but the potential is huge. Imagine being able to, reverse heart disease altogether or repair those congenital defects at the cellular level.
Wow. That's a whole new world, isn't it?
It really is. We're on the edge of a whole new era for medicine, especially when it comes to something as intricate as the cardiovascular system.
And with any new technology, especially one this powerful, I mean, there are going to be some big ethical questions, societal questions that come with it.
Oh, absolutely. We have to make sure these advancements are accessible to everyone and that they're used responsibly for the good of all.
Exactly. It's not enough to just advance the science. We have to think about the impact it's going to have on everyone.
Well said.
It's like we're not just writing a new chapter in the story of medicine, but we're also like writing the guidelines for the next generation of treatments. It's a big responsibility.
It is. It really is. But that's what makes these conversations so important.
Absolutely. Well, I think that about wraps up our journey through the circulatory system for today.
It's been quite a ride, hasn't it?
It really has. And, I have to say, I'm leaving with way more questions than I came with, which I guess is a good thing, right?
Always. That's the beauty of science, the beauty of the human body. Always more to learn, always more to discover.
I couldn't agree more. Big thanks to you, by the way, for guiding us through this incredible deep dive. Learned a ton.
The pleasure was all mine. Always enjoy these conversations with you.
And to our listeners, we hope you found this deep dive as fascinating as we did. Remember, the more you know about your health, the more power you have to make good decisions. So, keep those questions coming, keep learning, and most importantly, keep those hearts healthy.
Here's to a future full of healthy hearts.